All right, welcome to Fantasy Football Formula. I'm Chris Savold alongside John Schooner. We're here to bring you on your path to your own championship. All right, John, so week 6, there are some heartbreaks, and then there are some heartmates. Jamaal Charles, the most productive player in fantasy up to week 5, most total points for running backs.
Yeah.
Tears his ACL. That's the second ACL tear of his career. It was in the other leg. That's not uncommon to see. But Jamaal Charles...
If one leg is prone, then the other leg probably is too.
Yeah. Keeper leagues, I would keep him on your team. I would expect him to be a 3rd or 4th round pick next year.
Yeah, I mean,
that's going to
be like a steal, kind of like Aaron Foster was this year. I mean, I'd like Jamaal Charles next year.
But also, I mean, he'll be fully recovered by week 1 next year. That's for sure.
You just need to find a way with your fantasy team for this year. You need to find a way to fill that hole that you have with Jamaal
Keeper
Charles.
leagues, trade for him, maybe. Don't give up too much because he might not have that much value next year.
It's possible.
So don't...
I mean, you never know.
Don't trade a running back that has a lot of upside for next year for Jamaal Charles.
Don't be wary because you never know with 2 ACL tears what's going to be like, but you never know.
Yeah, I'm worried about him, but I think
he's a great competitor. So.
He is a very great competitor. Also, Justin Forsett, after struggling for the first few weeks,
he's been really good the past 2 weeks. He had 150 yards and then 130, something like that.
Yeah, about 121.
He's been really good, and one thing I'd like to take note of is even with Telfiero in the backfield,
he's actually just a trick.
He just went to the IR. He was even there, and Justin Forsett was still getting the looks in the red zone, which was the only problem with Justin Forsett. But now he's looking pretty good. So if you want Justin Forsett, if you can still buy low on him, I would.
Forsett, I don't know if you'll be able to buy low on him. He's had about 50 carries in the past 2 weeks. That's more than the first 3 weeks combined.
True.
He's very good,
especially
for Forsett.
The Ravens are looking to run the ball quite a bit, especially with Steve Smith out. So if Steve Smith doesn't play, you want Forsett.
So then,
RB1.
Also, Le'Veon Bell, Devonta Freeman continuing their dominance. Le'Veon Bell,
his worst game is like 18 points.
Next year, if Bell continues this throughout the entire season, I usually don't like drafting first overall. I would draft first overall.
I would draft first overall.
Bell is the Gronk of tight ends to running backs, but he's better.
But he's a running back, which is not a shallow position like tight end is. Le'Veon Bell is ridiculous. He's a lock for 20 carries pretty much. And he gets 100 yards every game. And D'Angelo Williams, everyone said, he might get a couple carries. He hasn't.
Yeah.
Le'Veon Bell is ridiculous.
He's also been a focal point in the passing game, putting up 18 catches in the past 3 weeks. So, waiver ads this week. We're coming at you a little bit late. But I would expect Christine Michael out of Dallas to still be on your waiver wire.
You want him.
Christine Michael was just reported by, I'm not sure who his source was, might be taking the starting spot of Joseph Randle. Randle was hyped coming into this year because of the talented Dallas offensive line, but Christine Michael, I think, might be more talented. Obviously, we saw him very well heralded in Seattle, but then was cut by Seattle this offseason and then signed to Dallas when Darren McFadden started to become injured, which was pretty expected.
But Christine Michael, he was very highly coveted when he came into the league. He was a really high draft pick, and we haven't seen really 20 carries out of him ever, really. But I like the talent. I think he could be really good. I think anybody could be good behind that offensive line, but I like Christine Michael going forward. You want him.
I think
RB2 potential.
If he gets 20 carries a game, once he gets 15, 20 carries a game, I think he's a top 15.
He could be. That offensive line is so good.
And in Dallas, we're seeing not really anything of note for fantasy, but they're making a switch at quarterback, and then also a switch at guard, and they're putting La'el Collins, the undrafted but was supposed to be a first-round draft pick, in
also,
a guard.
with Des Bryant coming back, that should be even better for Christine Michael when the passing game gets a little bit more interesting.
People out of the box. So then, John, also with Jamaal Charles' injury, who do you think the running back to pick up is?
I want Charchandrick West because Andy Reid said that he is the guy who has the similar workload to Jamaal Charles, and not the similar skills to Jamaal Charles. Niall Davis has been the guy in the past, but Charchandrick West, he kind of runs similarly to Jamaal Charles, and he looked a lot better than... Niall Davis had 2 carries, Charchandrick West had 7 when Jamaal Charles went down. So you might see a committee at first, but I would be surprised if Charchandrick West takes the reins and becomes an RB2.
Niall Davis, I really like. I wrote about him in my, not sleepers, but best handcuffs in the beginning of the season. I think that he will definitely have at least 1 or 2 games where he gets more carries than Charcandrick. I think there will be at least 1 more running back switch in Kansas City. That's just a gut call.
I think it'll be interesting. Definitely monitor it. I think it'll be really interesting to see this week what happens with that.
Yeah. So then value up. Or, my bad. John, you also have Gary Barnidge. What's your thoughts about him?
I do. I like him because Josh McCown seems to really like him. He kind of gets the volume that Jordan Cameron got before he left. I like him going forward. He's getting touchdowns, and I think he's a low-end tight end, but he's still looking pretty good.
Honestly, I think Barnidge, he's put up monster 20 receptions in the past 3 games, put up over 300 yards. Must pick up. I think you could start him over a lot of people. This week he's facing Denver, which is a good defense. So
yeah,
if he doesn't put up numbers versus Denver, I'd say buy low and just treat him as a fluke, quote unquote, in Cleveland's offense, so you can trade for him.
I would take him over. I'd probably have him in top 5 for tight ends right now. Maybe.
Do you want to do a quick over under for Gary Barnidge?
Yeah, sure.
All right, Greg Olsen, Gary Barnidge.
I have Slava Olsen because he's the top guy in the passing game.
Yeah, I would have to go with you. Barnidge or Jason Witten?
Barnidge right now, but...
Not right now. If rest of the season on.
Rest of the season, probably Witten, because Tony Romo loves him. But we don't know yet.
I would go Barnidge. I think... Witten has gotten
really
a lot of work
one.
because there hasn't been really much of a receiver in Dallas, and he's only gotten... Since week 2, he has had no touchdowns in 4 games.
But Jason Witten is the top target there. I mean, you never know. If
Dez
Gary
is
Barnidge
supposed to come back week 7.
If Gary Barnidge can get probably 1 more good week, I'd probably have him over Jason Witten.
Gary Barnidge, Tyler Eifert.
Tyler Eifert, because he's getting so many looks in the red zone.
Yeah, I would give you that. Gary Barnidge, Charles Clay.
I have Barnidge because...
I think I would go Barnidge, too.
Because Charles Clay has looked really good, and he's pretty quick for a tight end, but there's a lot of options in that offense, and I think when Sammy Watkins comes back, all that volume that Charles Clay has seen is really going to go down.
Yeah, so one of my waiver pickups is Javorius Allen.
On the off chance Forsett doesn't play.
It's supposed to be a game-time decision. He's listed as questionable right now. I don't know if he'll play. One thing to worry about, Ravens are playing at 4:25, so you're going to have to make a decision before.
I think Forsett is going to play.
I don't.
Because a lot of times with guys who are questionable, we end up seeing them play. And especially with Lorenzo not going to play, that would put a lot of stress on Allen. I think we'll see Justin Forsett, but if he doesn't play, I think you want to add Allen in case Forsett doesn't play.
I think Allen right now is a running back 3, maybe.
I'd start him at flex if Forsett doesn't play.
Yeah. All right, so those are our waiver pickups. Value who has gone up the past week because of their performances. Forsett we already touched on. Yeah. Doug Martin, very talented. We're seeing 2012 muscle hamster Doug Martin appear in that offense.
And I thought that we could see that again because
I did too.
He hasn't been healthy, and the minute he's healthy, he's getting 20 carries. He's the focal point of that offense, and Doug Martin looks really good. I saw last week and the week before, he's just been really good.
Yeah, he's averaging 5 yards a carry the past 2 weeks. getting a lot of red zone looks. I think do not trade Doug Martin unless you're getting a significant amount. He'll appear later in our show. Also, Allen Robinson, I really liked him at the beginning of the year. He was one of my favorite waiver picks, along with Doug Martin. But Robinson is the number 7 receiver right now, and he has been a little bit inconsistent.
But Blake Bortles likes him.
Yeah, he's put up at least 6 points in every game since week 1.
Week 1 was a fluke, though.
Yeah, I think pretty talented guy right there, and looking like a decent offense. Value down, Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon, I still think is a chance to be a productive running back 2 in fantasy. But he just hasn't been producing whatsoever.
The Chargers have no running game. Their offensive line is lousy, and their offense doesn't look all that great in general, but Antonio Gates is taking pretty much all the red zone targets you could imagine, so I don't see Melvin Gordon on the rise unless something dramatic happens.
Yeah, so Melvin Gordon, he's still getting like about 20 touches a game, 15 touches a game. We haven't seen him put up over 10 points, but we also haven't seen him put up under 3. I know that's not a great amount, but I think his talent is there. The workload should be there. But there's a chance
their line isn't great. But I mean, we'll see with Melvin Gordon. He could become an upside play, but it's just looking kind of sketchy with him right now.
Yes. So then, John, Demaryius Thomas obviously was number 2 wide receiver last year, but this year, Peyton Manning isn't looking great.
Their defense is winning them games. That's why he's gone down for me. Is they're still gonna win, so it's not like they're playing behind the whole game because their defense is so good. So Demaryius Thomas's volume is gonna go down, and I just don't like that team fantasy wise at all because, I mean, yes, there's still some volume, but Demaryius Thomas, I don't know. I'd probably trade him if you could get like Amari Cooper and like Allen Robinson or something.
I don't know if that would happen.
I don't know, but I'd get some good guys.
Russell Wilson for me. Seattle's offensive line is just horrible. Marshawn Lynch is coming back this week. We'll see how that goes.
Much.
Wilson, I liked in about June as like a 3rd or 4th round pick. But then as the summer went on, after the first preseason game, basically after the first drive, Seattle's offensive line just looked horrible. I think that trade, Jimmy Graham
was an
for Max
awful
Unger,
trade.
Horrible trade.
And people said it at the time. Like, I read reports about that being a bad trade for Seattle, but obviously everyone said, oh, well, it's Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham's not producing either.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to Seattle's offense. Pretty conservative.
Their offense has just been bad in general.
And then alongside that, Jimmy Graham, who we just touched on,
I would take
value down.
I would take guys like Tyler Eifert over Jimmy Graham right now.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy Graham he's looking like a top 10 tight end, not the number 2 pushing number 1 tight end. I mean, he's not looking good at all. Trade Jimmy Graham.
Would you accept Jimmy Graham in trades? Because that's, over the weekend I was proposed a trade. I'm trying to find it right now. But, basically, I got Jimmy Graham and Andre Johnson and Jimmy Graham for Charkandrick West. I was trading away Charkandrick West. I decided not to do it. Simply because if you look at the upside...
Charkandrick West has infinite upside right now.
Not infinite.
Not infinite, but such high upside right now.
I say maxes out as a high RB2.
Yeah, no, I can see him as a high RB2. Not RB1, but he has really high upside considering he was owned in 0.1% of leagues last week.
Yeah. So, trade talk nowadays. Would you trade Dez Bryant for Mike Evans and Giovanni Bernard?
No. Dez Bryant, hang on to him.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Bryant's only supposed to be out for 1 more week. Then Mike Evans is really not produced until this point. And Giovanni Bernard, that's a RBBC in Cincinnati. I think he's starting to get the edge, but
it's just an ugly situation there because we thought at the beginning of the year that Jeremy Hill was going to be 20 touches and Jeremy Hill was going to get all the passing, but all the passing down. But now
anyone who listens to this podcast, I apologize for my prediction about Jeremy Hill. I really like to go into the air.
If you look back at our Week 1 podcast, I predicted Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard to be an RBBC.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
So would you, second one, receive Randall Cobb, Todd Gurley, and Matt Ryan for Carson Palmer and Julio Jones?
I would do it because Julio Jones, obviously one of the top, if not the top, fantasy wide receiver right now. But Todd Gurley is the focal point of that offense by so much, and Randall Cobb has been really good. Matt Ryan and Carson Palmer are pretty similar, although Carson Palmer has been a little bit better this season. But I would take Cobb, Gurley, and Ryan because Gurley and Cobb are both looking really good this season.
Here's what I would do. Get Cobb, get Gurley, get Ryan. Trash Palmer and Jones. Jones has had no receiving touchdowns or no rushing touchdowns in the past 3 weeks. If it weren't for the fluke fumble recovery in the end zone, he would have less than 20 points in the past 3 weeks. I understand the first 3 weeks were off the chain. At that point, he was projected to outscore Antonio Brown last year by over 100 points.
I could still see him outscoring Antonio Brown from last year.
I think Julio Jones, his touchdown production in the first 3 weeks was phenomenal, but with Devontae Freeman, since Devontae Freeman has become a starter, which was week 3, right?
Yes.
Or week 4.
When Tevin Coleman got hurt.
0 touchdowns. And
That's gonna change.
still like Julio.
That's gonna change.
Buy low on him in a league if you can, I guess, but I still...
You still want Julio Jones. Julio Jones is... I still see him as the top fantasy.
If you listen to the top 5 wide receivers right now, Julio Jones could have predicted Larry Fitzgerald. No way. No one saw that coming. DeAndre Hopkins, a little bit maybe.
And then the next 2 were waiver pickups.
And then James Jones, Travis Benjamin. Benjamin, unsustainable. Jones, I don't know how sustainable it is. I think he'll finish top 15, top 20.
James Jones he's becoming... I thought he was going to be a lot more touchdown dependent than he is, but he's not all that fast. He's pretty big.
Yeah. So, alright, so my favorite part of the podcast, over under. First, we're going to talk about the muscle hamster, Doug Martin. Martin's put up about 60 fantasy points the past 2 weeks.
50.
That's insane. He had 33 last week, didn't he?
30 and 20.
Okay. Anyways, John, would you rather have Doug Martin or Carlos Hyde?
Doug Martin. Volume.
Yeah, I agree with that. Hyde, it's too much in game flow.
The 49ers
and you hate to see that.
The 49ers are just terrible. I can't accept a 49ers player right now.
Yeah. Doug Martin, Frank Gore.
Doug Martin.
I would go Martin, too.
Gore will probably get a bunch of touchdowns, but I like Martin still.
Doug Martin, Matt Forte.
Matt Forte. I have Matt Forte.
I would go Forte. Forte owners, I would try to unload him.
If you could
his
get
volume's way
Doug
too
Martin,
much.
if you get Doug Martin and someone for Matt Forte, I would definitely do that because Doug Martin is looking like he's getting a lot of volume, but Matt Forte is he's getting a lot of yards per carry, and he looks really good, but the Bears' offense makes me nervous, kind of like the 49ers.
All right, Doug Martin or Chris Johnson? I'd say Chris Johnson.
I have Martin because Andre Ellington isn't 100% yet.
Well, but Ellington broke off a 63-yard run yesterday, or last week.
Chris Johnson is still the starter, but Doug Martin is pretty much unquestioned right now. Charles Sims has kind of filled into his role that they expected him to play. You want Doug Martin.
I don't know. I really like Chris Johnson for the rest of the... I think you can still not buy low on him. Actually, yeah, sure. Why not?
David Johnson is getting some touchdowns, though.
David Johnson is a fluke.
He is a fluke, but
Trade David Johnson!
But he is a fluke, but he's also the vulture. He's the vulture.
Guess how many touchdowns he's gotten?
How many?
Guess how many carries he's gotten? 18 carries in the entire season.
But he's a vulture.
You can't start the guy.
You can't start the guy, but he's a vulture. I mean, that's what he is. His
points from rushing yards this season, he's gotten about like 8 fantasy points from rushing.
How many touchdowns does he have?
And he's 4, I think.
He gets a lot of touchdowns.
Oh, receiving.
He's a vulture for Chris Johnson.
All right, so then Mike Evans, Matthew Berry dubbed him a wide receiver 3 for the rest of the season.
I disagree.
Would you rather have Mike Evans or Allen Hurns?
Mike Evans.
It's weird to say it, but it's close. Hurns has been
really good, but Mike Evans is such a gifted football player.
He's been consistent too. Like Hurns, he's never had under 60 yards or no touchdown. Like
I like Allen Hurns, but Mike Evans is a lot better.
Yeah, I think I would go Mike Evans there too. Mike Evans or Jarvis Landry.
Mike Evans, Jarvis Landry. The Dolphins' offense, I want to see them this week, but one guy I do like is Lamar Miller in that offense this week.
All right, Mike Evans, Jeremy Maclin.
I have Jeremy Maclin
I have Evans too.
Because of all that volume he's getting in Kansas City. He's looked really good the past couple weeks.
Alrighty, well, one quick thing from the Redskins game. Tough game. We competed well, but as Jay Gruden said, which I agree with, there are no more moral victories in Washington. We're a legitimate football team. We're not a joke anymore. Kirk Cousins proved himself to be a starting caliber NFL quarterback. Not in fantasy.
He still makes the dumb decisions.
Not really.
He threw a pick six to lose the game. I understand that it was kind of a fluky pick, but you can't throw a pick six to lose the game in overtime. Kirk Cousins is startable, but
in the NFL non-fantasy, he's a horrible fantasy quarterback.
Horrible fantasy quarterback, but he's definitely a startable NFL quarterback. But he's not taking them anywhere.
All right. I think the Redskins, if we get a top 10 draft pick, we shouldn't draft wide quarterback.
No, don't draft a quarterback. Draft a cornerback or a safety or something.
I don't think we don't need a
quarterback.
All right, highlight from Sunday's game, Trenton Robinson. That kid hustles. And if you watch the game, every single gang tackle, he was flying in there. He was flying over people. He was flying under people. He had interception. Pretty sure he had a forced fumble. I'm not sure on that. But let me just quickly check here. Yeah, so it says that. So Trenton Robinson had 4 rush tackles in the secondary. He had a few going off the right guard, mostly on the right side of the line. But the point is, this guy hustles. He's tough. I think he could. It's probably an overreaction. Could be a safety of the future for the team because obviously Deshaun Goldson, he's very old, not a long term.
Their secondary is not good.
Yes,
their secondary is not good.
I know. They actually performed very well against the Falcons,
which is one of the best. They actually limited the passing game, but Devontae Freeman kind of ran all over them.
Yeah, but that's not involved with the secondary.
No, it's not. But usually their run defense is
and to be fair,
I was a little bit surprised this week.
So Matt Ryan
passing game was going to be more
completed.
Falcons.
Not too great. He only completed 57% of his passes. That's horrible. He threw 2 picks, no touchdowns, 254 yards. I'm pretty sure those are all lows for him this year.
Yeah.
And limited an injured Julio Jones to 67 yards, but didn't allow. Well, that doesn't count. And did not allow Atlanta to have a receiver with over 100 fantasy yards. So I wish you all the best of luck in Week 6 for fantasy football. I know this is a big game for a lot of you probably. So from Chris Savold at Savold Fantasy Talk on Twitter and Chris Savold 59 is my personal. John Schooner at
John_Schooner.
John_Schooner. This was Fantasy Football Formula. See ya!